Barbara, how is it that you do that? If I had not just watched that unfold, I never would have believed this story. And I said, Victor, it's not me doing it other than I have my door open to God and the other side. It was them helping us tonight. And he was just like, sometimes I can't, you blow my mind. I can't believe that this stuff happens.
Welcome to Prioritize Your Life and PrioritizeYourLife.com. I am excited today to be here with Barbara Bartolome. As per custom with my project, don't know anything about your story, and it's one of my favorite things to hear these and to be in the room. So I can't wait to hear about your experience. It sounds like maybe you've had more than one. So, and as pretty usual too, I'm guessing it set your life on a pretty interesting trajectory. So,
Absolutely.
yeah.
Absolutely. Awesome. I wouldn't give them up for anything. They're the most special moments of my life. Yeah. To start, go a little bit backwards, I was raised in Salem, Oregon, and I grew up there. And when I was about 27 years old, this person from Santa Barbara, California, met me up there, and he wooed me, and he then asked me to move to Santa Barbara and get married. So I had been married previously to a high school friend of mine who just didn't want to grow up, and he didn't want to be a daddy, and I had a son, and so it didn't work, right? So, and this man had a daughter, but she was living with her mom. I moved down to Santa Barbara thinking it was going to be this beautiful life. He owned a house down there, and I was going to have a wonderful place for my son and got down. A couple months later, got married, and within about 3 months, he started showing the real side of him that wasn't good. And he had a lot of stress in his position at his office, and he would come home and I think he just had natural anger, and he had things carrying over from his childhood. If I hadn't done something that he wanted me to do, or if I did something wrong, or set something in the wrong place, or if I made any mistake at all, it was hitting me, pushing me, shoving me. I mean, sometimes I was on the floor and he was kicking me. It was very abusive. And I didn't know. I'd never been around something like that. I didn't know what to do. I was 1,000 miles away from my home, my family and friends. Had nobody that I knew that I could turn to. I didn't want to tell my mom because she was actually a police officer in Oregon, and I knew that she'd come down and shoot him. So I was like, yeah, so can't tell mom. So I lived with that and tried to be perfect. And it was very stressful. I also worked full time, and he confiscated all of my money, and he gave me a $25 a month stipend. So if I had to buy a birthday present for my son or my mom or somebody, in my family, I just had to save up that money until I got enough that I could buy something for them and then ship it up to Oregon or give it to my son for his birthday. So he was very controlling, manipulative, abusive. The years went by, and I had tried a marriage family therapist to get him to change. No, he rejected that after 3 sessions or so. I took him to a pastor of a church, asked him to change, and please listen. No, that didn't work. Wrote him a 9-page letter and said, if you continue to hurt me, I don't want to live this way. I'm going to leave. And of course, more blow-ups. He would always apologize after the blow-ups, and he would say, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to do that, and, like take me out to dinner or buy me flowers or something to offset the fact that he had just punched me. But I couldn't take it anymore, so I moved out for a year, and I was living in an apartment, and my mom came down from Oregon, and she was helping me with my son, and I didn't know that behind my back during the day when I was at work, he was coming over to my apartment and talking to my mom and telling her that he had fixed himself. And so my mom started encouraging me to move back in with him. And so I ended up doing that. And 3 months after I moved back in, he ruptured the disc in my back. and he did it on purpose. And he called me out to a patio. I was inside, and I had a baby and his child, and I had had a problem pregnancy. And he called me outside, and he had this board, and he told me to come over, and he pulled my arm and pulled me underneath the board, and then he took his shoulder away, and he was taller than me. So the weight of the cement bags that were on the other end of the board pulled the board down on my shoulder, and it blew the disc out of my back. Oh, it felt like I'd been shot in my back. And I hadn't done anything wrong. It wasn't, I don't know, I think that he was planning to kill me in the future because he'd really highly insured me. So I think that my life was in danger. I went to the first doctor that saw me, and he said, "I'm sorry, I can't fix this. You're not going to walk again." And then I had a friend that I had found at my work, and she said, no, you have to go to a neurosurgeon, take all the records that your doctor did, go to this neurosurgeon. So I went, and he had the x-rays up on a wall on a lighted screen, and he very kind of cockily said, "Oh, I can fix this." Well, I wanted to believe that. I was 31 years old. I wanted to believe that I could walk again, and that I would be normal again, and that I was okay. And so he arranged for a surgery that was in December of 1987. And I went to the hospital the night before the 7 a.m. surgery because they wanted to do one final test. He had gotten an orthopedic surgeon on the surgical team, and the two of them decided that I needed to have a myelogram. And that's where they inject iodine dye into your spinal cord, and then they tip you on an x-ray table so that the dye goes down your spine with gravity. And then if the dye flows out of your spine in any area, obviously your spinal cord has been damaged. They thought that maybe one of the chips from the disc that blew out had chipped the spinal cord. So they were testing this, and the two x-ray techs that were in the room, and there was a nurse as well as the two doctors, the x-ray tech said, "You have to hold completely still during this procedure, because if you move at all, you could have headaches for months afterwards." And so I've always been a do what I'm told to do person, and, not move if I'm not supposed to. So I was laying there on my back, looking upward, and they had the x-ray machine above me. And he started pushing the button on the table, and the two doctors were kind of leaning against a wall talking to each other, and the nurse was over at a table by the door doing paperwork, and the two x-ray techs started talking to each other about their weekend plans. And he had his finger on the button, tipping the table, and he's not watching. He had his finger on the wrong button. I didn't know that, but almost immediately I started feeling funny, and I thought, oh, should I be feeling like this? I feel funny, like I'm going to faint. And so I was laying there, and I knew that I wasn't supposed to, move or anything. And they were talking, and I progressed too long with just laying there and not voicing that something was wrong. By the time that maybe a minute and a half had passed, my eyes started rolling to the back of my head, and I couldn't keep them forward. And then the last thing that happened before they noticed that something was wrong was I started hyperventilating. And so I was breathing really fast, and they stopped talking, and he leaned over and looked at my face, and then he leaned back, and he had this look on his face when he saw where his thumb was on the machine. He went, and then I shut my eyes on my body, and the next second I was right on the ceiling up above my body. It felt like the ceiling was against the back of my head, but of course I didn't have a body up there, but I was looking straight down at the room, and I felt completely okay. I felt like I was wrapped in love. I was wrapped in acceptance, a warm blanket. It was just wonderful. I'd felt so panicked down below. And that second that I got up there, I was just like, and I looked down and I said, if I'm up here and my body's down there and he's calling code blue, I think I just died. And right when I said that, I felt a presence next to me right on my left-hand side. And it felt so eternal and so loving and accepting that I felt that was God. And I didn't look over to see if there was a light or if there was any visual face or anything like that. I was watching everything down below as the doctors were screaming at orders at the people that were in there, and new people were coming in. One lady brought in an oxygen card. The nurse that was over at the table was yelling in the phone, "Stat, get a defib unit in here." This man came in with a small box, and they were doing CPR on me, the two x-ray techs, and doing the chest compressions and blowing in my mouth. And then when the oxygen cart came in, they put the oxygen mask on my face, and they just were switching off every 2 minutes doing chest compressions. But this man came in, and here I am up on the ceiling, basically perfectly fine, talking to God. And I had been saying a couple times to God, I really want to go back into my life. If I leave my children in this way at this time, they'll probably be abused, and they won't have a good life, and they won't grow up to be good people. I need to go back. And so I'd said that a couple times, and this man walked into the room with this box, and he put it on this shelf right on the other side of the bed from where the guys were doing CPR. And he was starting to peel off these white things and put them on my chest. I'd never seen a heart monitor. I didn't know what it was. And right in the middle of me saying how much I wanted to go back, I said, I understand what everyone else is doing, but what is that man doing over there? And when I said that, my consciousness was moved down right in front of the box that he had put on the shelf. So then I watched his hand go in front of my face like this, and he flicked a toggle switch on the side of the box. He had already put the white things on my chest. And this little green light in this long screen lit up and went straight across the screen. And it was making this monotone beep, and I didn't know what it was. So I watched it go for the first time across the screen, and I watched it go the second time across the screen, and the third time it started to go across the screen, and I went, oh, I think that's a heart monitor. I think that's my heart. It's not beating. And the second that I thought that, I was back up on the ceiling next to God again, like he had shown me what I'd asked for, because I didn't understand what that was. And so he put me down there so I could get that, and then put me back up. So then I was up there, and I said again, I really need to go back into my life. Please let me go back. And the neurosurgeon then said down there below to the orthopedic surgeon, too much time has passed. She's going to be brain dead. We need to do something. And the orthopedic surgeon said, stand clear. And everybody backed away from the table. He took 2 steps forward from the side of the table where I was laying on, and he took his fist from behind his back, and he pounded my chest. Well, I watched my body kind of react to that. It kind of went like that, kind of jerked, but I didn't go back into it. But up on the ceiling, the being said, but if you go back, you'll still be in your marriage. What will you do? And then I saw all these little film clips that just went flash, 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 flash. That wasn't my life review, but it was a review of all of the incidents that I had been hurt and troubled by my husband. Everything that he had done that had been awful. And then I was given the time up there to think about that. And I came to the decision, all the things that I've done, everything I've tried to help him change, it's never been anything that's ever worked. He can't change. It's me that needs to change. I need to get away. And so I said to the being, if you let me go back, I promise you I'll get strong enough to leave him. And the second I said the word him, the orthopedic surgeon did another precardial thump onto my chest, and that restarted my heart. So I shut my eyes up above, and I opened my eyes, and I was back in my body with the oxygen mask on my face. But I knew everything that had just happened up there and everything that had happened down here. And I said, what just happened? And the nurse leaned over me and said, stop, don't talk. We need to stabilize you. And for 20 minutes, I sat there and watched everybody, and I was like waiting to be able to talk. And they finally took the oxygen mask off my face, and I said, what just happened? I was up on the ceiling and I could see and hear everything. And the neurosurgeon went, "Oh, brother." And that made me disclose. No, she was on the phone over there calling for the defib unit and saying stat. And then that lady brought in the oxygen card. And that man brought in the heart monitor, and I watched it flatline. And these two guys were doing CPR on me until the oxygen cart came in. Then they stopped blowing in my mouth, and they just did the chest compressions and switched off. And then you said to him, too much time had passed, that I was going to be brain dead. And then he came over and struck my chest twice, and I came back. And when I was saying that, the orthopedic surgeon was standing there, and everybody else was just like in this awe look on their faces. And the neurosurgeon clenched his fists like this, and he went, "I am not going to stand here and listen to this." And he went running out of the room. But then the orthopedic surgeon came over, took my hand very gently and said, "How did it feel? What was it like?" And so I recounted more, and he just was amazed, and everybody else stood there and listened. But then when they moved me onto a gurney and up to a room waiting for the surgery the next day, not a single person that came in to do my vitals or anybody would talk to me and tell me what had happened. I didn't know there was anything called a near-death experience. I'd never done meditation. I didn't know you could go out of your body. I knew nothing. So they came and got me for the 7 a.m. surgery the next morning. And after the surgery, I was in the recovery area, and both of the doctors were walking towards me. And I wanted to know what had happened last night. So I asked, what was that last night? And the neurosurgeon went, "I am not here to talk about that. I'm here to tell you what happened during your surgery." And so I got shut down a lot. When my now ex-husband came in later that afternoon, and I told him what had happened, he said, "Oh, that couldn't have happened. You probably hallucinated that." Well, I have a completely clean background. I've held a secret clearance with the Department of Defense. I work for the police department in Santa Barbara. My background, I never did drugs. I never did alcohol. I never did smoking. I never did marijuana. I never stole anything. I never did anything because my mom, as a police officer, said she would shoot my butt off if I did. So I was a good girl. So I knew that I had not hallucinated that. And so that made me internalize it to where I didn't want to tell anybody anymore. So I got out of the hospital, and 2 weeks later I had to go back to the neurosurgeon's office. And when I said to him, "Please, will you please talk to me about what happened the night before the surgery?" He said, "I am not going to talk about that. Don't bring it up again." So
Wow.
that shut the door for me, and I didn't talk about it, and I just went on with my life. I left my husband. I ended up being single for a couple of years. I started to repaint my life, and I wouldn't date anybody during those 2 years.
We'll get right back to Barbara's incredible story in just a second. Right now, I have to tell you that in the past 5 years of doing this show, I have had countless companies approach me about wanting to highlight their products on Prioritize Your Life, and it was just never right. Nothing lined up with this idea that we need to prioritize our lives physically and spiritually until now. There is a company called Cardio Miracle, and it is a supplement in a drink form. And I just have to tell you, I couldn't endorse this more for health. And it's not just for your heart, even though it's called Cardio Miracle. And if you are dealing with any heart problems at all, please look into this supplement. But it is incredible for so many things. It's good for blood flow, for your brain health, your immune system. I mean, the list literally just goes on and on about what this supplement does. If you need to kind of give any part of your health a boost, which we all do, please check this out. There's a link in the description, or go to cardiomiracle.com/prioritize your life.
After 1 year, I thought, if I ever do date somebody, I want to make sure this time around that it's a good person. I want to have the good character traits that I would want in my life. So I started in a little book next to my bed, writing down character traits that I would think of, and kindness and compassion and honesty and all the good ones. And I never put any negatives. I didn't put bad ones. So I was writing them and I was thinking of people in my life and what were their good character traits. And I was thinking of people I worked with, what were their good character traits. And so I had about 80. And then I started watching people out in the community as I was doing things with my kids and stuff. What character traits could I find? So I would go to the book on really regular, like maybe 4 to 5 times a week. And I would read through the character traits and think if there was anything else I could add. And then I would say, a little prayer, and I would say, God, I don't know who this person is, but I know that you do. And if you could bring him to me in a safe way so that I can evaluate him and make sure that he's this person, I'd really appreciate it. And if you could also make sure it's in the right timing for his life and for my life, that would be good too. And I thank you so much. Good night, and I love you. So I would say that, and I didn't need it fast. I didn't need it furious. I just needed it at the right timing for both of us. And so one Saturday, my son, who is now in 8th grade, and my daughter was only 5 years old, he came in with a girl from the neighborhood that he knew that was in 7th grade. And he said, Mom, we want to go to a movie. Will you take us to a movie? So after they convinced me to do that, they said, well, come over. She only lives a half a block away, right around the corner over there. Come over to the White House. And I said, okay, I'll come pick you up. So came over 15 minutes later and picked them up. When I knocked on the door, this very tall guy answered the door. And I, having a sister that's 6'3", knew that nobody as tall likes to hear, how tall are you? Did you play basketball? So I said, hi, I'm here to pick up Scott and your daughter to go to the movie. And he said, oh, you're taking them to the movie? They asked me to take them to the movie. And I realized what they were doing.
Oh, no way.
They were putting us together. So I was very embarrassed, turned bright red, of course, and said, well, it's okay. Actually, you can take them to the movie. I have, other things I need to do. And then they came out from hiding behind the fireplace and said, oh, no, Mom, you have to go too. Yes, you have to take us too. So they made us sit next to each other. I was really embarrassed. Afterwards, we went for pizza, and I ended up asking him 3 questions. Have you lived in Santa Barbara for a long time? And he said, yes, he was born and raised there. Where do you work? Oh, he worked at the university in Santa Barbara, UC Santa Barbara. And I said, oh, and so what caused your divorce? Because I wanted to make sure that I got the right person in my life. And the sadness that I saw on his face when I said that, he had been hurt by his previous wife. And he was just a very gentle person, you could tell. And so for about 4 months, we dated and took our kids everywhere and had fun together. And I watched how I saw those character traits in him in different situations. And at 6 months to the day from the day we met, we married, and it's now been 34 years. So I got my good guy by putting the list together and knowing what I wanted, because then I got it delivered by God to my doorstep, basically his doorstep. But yeah, so it was really amazing. And I've had these other wonderful things that I've seen the other side interact with me and save my life in situations. And one of them was an amazing experience when my husband and I, in 2016, had driven up to San Francisco for me to do 5 talks up there about my near-death experience. And by the way, my husband is super supportive of me with my near-death experience. And I started a group in Santa Barbara in 2011. And it's the near-death experience group in Santa Barbara. And I bring speakers to come to Santa Barbara from all over, and they give their experience to the audience. And we're the largest group on the West Coast. So it's been amazing. My near-death experience is big in my life. But we were coming back from San Francisco, and my husband was driving our van, and there's a very windy place that's just about 35 miles north of Santa Barbara called Gaviota, and it was about 9:30 at night. We'd come around this bend in the road that comes from inland and gets to the ocean, and it goes all along the ocean for about 35 miles to get down to Santa Barbara, and it's super windy that night, and it's buffeting the car, and I'm laying back in my seat, and all of a sudden, this huge gust hit the side of our van, and I watched as my husband is 7 feet tall, and he's a big whopper guy, and he was just fighting with the steering wheel to keep the car under control. And I saw that, and after the gust kind of calmed down, I said, Victor, I think we should go slower. I think we should do 50 miles an hour instead of 65 because we could go out of control really easily. And he said, yeah, I think that's a good idea. So he slowed down to 50, and I thought, okay, now we're safe. And so we're going along, and all of a sudden in my ear, I hear, danger, big impact ahead, danger, big impact. And I went, okay. So I sat up in my seat, pulled my seat back up, and I made sure my seatbelt was nice and tight and everything. And then I looked at my husband. I said, you know how I sometimes hear from the other side, from angels or God or whoever wants to tell me something? And he said, yeah. And I said, well, I just heard danger, big impact ahead, danger, big impact. And I said, I don't know if it's a tree that's been blown down or a car that's gone out of control, but something up ahead is a possible impact for us. We need to slow down further. Let's do 30 miles an hour. And he looked at me, he kind of panicked, and he goes, Barbara, we can't do 30. We're on the freeway. And the freeway up there where we were at is 2 lanes heading south to Santa Barbara and another 2 lanes at a higher level going north away from Santa Barbara. So you really don't have any street lights or car lights or anything lighting up the area. And so we're going along, and he's looking shocked at me. And I said, Victor, there's nobody behind us. There's nobody in front of us, so nobody's going to care if we're doing 30 miles an hour. If you see somebody catching up to us, then go ahead and speed up to 50 if that makes you feel better. And then when they pass us, slow down because something is an impact ahead. And he goes, oh, okay, I can do that. So we slowed down to 30, and for like 10 minutes, we were doing 30 miles an hour, cruising along, and I'm trying to look through the windshield like, what is the impact? What is the impact? So we come around this corner, and there's this big long stretch after the corner, and there's a police car clear down, a mile away from us, and you can see the lights going on the police car. So I immediately knew, it always hits me right here, that's where the danger is. So I was very intently, like, as we were coming up in the slow lane, the police car we can see is also in the slow lane, and we're coming up behind it, and all of a sudden, somebody from the other side, it was very freaky, grabbed my upper arms. I felt 2 hands clenching my upper arms. I saw the shimmer of a face right here in front of my face, and it screamed, it was a male, screamed 10 miles an hour at the top of their lungs. And I heard that, and I was so freaked that they touched me and everything that I screamed 10 miles an hour, and Victor heard it. So he slowed down, and the cop car is up here, and we had just changed into the fast lane to go around the cop car. We didn't know why the cop car was stopped there. And he comes up and he slows down to 10 miles an hour right as he gets next to the cop car. He's doing 10. And just as we slid past it, maybe, 50 feet, I don't know my measurements very well, 50 feet or so, our lights finally lit up. The semi-truck that had turned over on its side, so the dirty bottom was facing us, no reflectors, and the fast lane was right where the truck's cab was, so we would have hit the cab of the truck, which causes the gas tanks to rupture. So because we were doing 10 miles an hour, Victor was able to go off the left-hand side of the freeway and go around the front of the truck. And on the far side, I looked up, and there was the police officer up on top of the truck, kind of bracing against the wind and talking to the truck driver through an open window because truck driver was trapped and hurt down there. And he knew, the police officer knew, the reason why no cars caught up with us that whole time was that the California Highway Patrol had closed the freeway behind us, and we were the only car in between the truck and the closure. So we got guided so that we didn't kill them, didn't kill us, got around the other side of the truck, and I started saying thank you to God for saving all of our lives. And about 10 minutes down the road further, Victor finally spoke to me and said, Barbara, how is it that you do that? If I had not just watched that unfold, I never would have believed this story. And I said, Victor, it's not me doing it other than I have my door open to God and the other side. And I said, when they talk to me, I understand it's from them. So it's not intuition that you have, it's the other side helping you. So listen to that intuition and act on it. And I said, it was them helping us tonight, and that's why I'm thankful to them. And he was just like, sometimes I can't, you blow my mind. I can't believe that this stuff happens. So there's just been a lot of other wonderful times that I've had in my life that were amazing moments. And one other one that I want to say was long before my age 31 NDE, I was riding across a bridge in Salem, Oregon, and I was the intern for photography for a newspaper. It was very cutting edge because I was 17 and, I'd been taken on in my senior year as an intern at the newspaper. I loved photography. So riding across the bridge and it's only all the traffic was coming from behind me, and the traffic going the other way was on another bridge. And I was riding along, and some pressure was happening behind my head, pushing me forward over my handlebars, and I was fighting it. I did not want to look like a 10-year-old kid riding my 10 speed across the bridge like a little dork. So I was fighting this pressure pushing me down. I didn't know what was happening. And it was stronger than me for sure. And it got me down over my handlebars. So I was riding like this. And just as it got me down, this truck came rumbling along from behind me. And I didn't know it was coming because I was looking straight ahead. And it had an extended side mirror. And the mirror, since my head was down, literally brushed and touched my head. And then the pressure on the back of my head was released, and I could lift my head, and I watched as the mirror receded on the truck, and I realized if I'd been sitting upright, it would have hit me right in the middle of my back and knocked me off my bike, possibly into the tires. I would have been hurt in it in some way. And I realized, oh my gosh, I just had my life saved. So I pulled my bike over and leaned over the edge of the bridge so that the cars going by wouldn't see me. I started crying. And I said, thank you for saving my life. I really appreciate that. I love you. And I said, my thanks, like I always do. And then I went to work and I was at my internship. And that evening, I had a boyfriend that I'm still very good friends with. And he remembers that we went out to dinner and that I told him about that happening. And he said, you never really shared too many stories about that when you were young. But he said he's watched some of the podcasts that I've done. And he said, I knew who you were back then. You were just a very special person. And he said, you told me that when that happened. He said, I know that's real. And so that was pretty amazing. So fast forward, I hadn't told my family about my near-death experience at age 31. I, had a new husband. What ended up happening was that my older brother was coming to visit. Actually, we were going to visit him. And I had gone to one of the IANS conferences, which is the International Association for Near-Death Studies, and they're all about near-death experiences. I'd been invited by a doctor to go to that after I had started, coming out of my shell about talking about it. I was at one of the talks, and this woman that was talking was PMH Atwater, who's written a number of books about children and their near-death experiences. And she was talking about the after effects that children have. Well, in that conference and in that audience, I was identifying with the after effects that she was talking about all the way back to my early childhood. And that was disconcerting to me because I had my near-death experience at age 31. And I was going, what? So I talked with her afterwards, and she was really nice. She took my hands and I asked her, why would I have these same after effects all the way prior to my near-death experience, all the way back to my childhood? And she took my hands and she gently said, my dear, if you have those particular experiences all the way back to your childhood, she said, then you probably had an early life near-death experience. Well, at the time, I thought, what? More than one? Like, no. And then after that conference, I was home thinking about that, and I thought, okay, I'm going up to visit my brother, and he's 10 years older than me. This is my chance, since my parents are deceased, to ask him if anything happened in my early childhood. He would know. So we were out to dinner with my brother and his wife and his daughter, And I said before we went into the restaurant, "Hey, Brad, I'm doing this little booklet I'm going to keep in my purse, and I'm going to have all my, vaccines in it or whatever, and my sicknesses that I've had, and what medicine I take, and in case there's a car accident, they'll have all that information. And hey, is there anything back in my early years, like accidents that I had, or anything like that you know about that you could tell me?" And he goes, "I don't think so, but I'll think about it." So we had dinner. We came outside the restaurant, and he put his hand on my arm and he said, "Barb, there is something I need to talk to you about." He said, "I've always felt that I should talk to you about it, but at the times when I felt that I should talk to you, it wasn't either a good time in your life or I didn't have the ability to talk to you about it in my life." He said, "When you were 18 months old, you died." And I said, "What?" And he said, "Yeah." He said, "You were 18 months old. You had a really high fever. You went into convulsions and you stopped breathing. Dad called the fire department. They told Dad to tell Mom to put you into tepid bath water and then to slowly add ice cubes to slowly lower your body temperature so you wouldn't go into shock. And they were sending the ambulance over." So my other brother and my older brother both went over to the neighbors' houses to get more ice. And he said when he came back with the bag of ice the neighbor had given him, and my mom had taken it, she was sobbing over the bathtub. And he said I was soft purple. And he said lifeless, just not breathing, nothing. And he said Mom was adding the ice to the water. And he said all of a sudden you went, and he said you arched your back, took in this deep breath, and then you started crying and you went from purple to red, back to red again. And he said then the ambulance people came in a couple minutes later, wrapped you up in a towel, and they took you off to the ambulance, and you went to the hospital. You were there for 4 days, and Mom and Dad said never, ever to talk about it. But he said, you had this experience when you were young. And I said, guess what? I had another one when I was 31. So I told him about my near-death experience, and he's like a previous electrician. He wasn't, a guy that was spiritual or anything. I've changed his life too. He realizes, yeah, there is existence beyond our lifetime, and that there is a God, and that he's watching over us, and that we have, our consciousness survives our death. And yeah, it was just amazing. So he's really come on board, which I never thought that he would, because he's, the big brother that was, yeah. So he's a cool guy now. So anyway, I love talking about my stories and stuff because I realize that it contributes to people's lives. And when you know that your consciousness survives death, then when someone who passes away that is your loved one, if you continue to talk to them, they can hear you. They're in just a different realm. Yes, their personal body is gone. They're not in your life here, but they might be helping you from the other side. You never know who those helpers are. I didn't know who that guy was that was helping me in front of, when they grabbed my arm and saved me from the truck. So I don't know who pushed my head down when I was on the bike. But I think there's tons of helpers on the other side, and it could be our ancestors, it could be angels, it could be God himself. But I think that if everybody understood that and trusted that, I think our lives would be a lot different, to go around and love all the people that you can, help the people that you can. That's what a lot of people contact me and say, I'm in a depression, and I'm sad, and I'm upset, and I don't know what to do with my life. So I always feel that the way out of that is to stop focusing on yourself and start focusing on others. Find ways that you can help somebody else, because when you help that little child, or you help that elderly person, or you help that homeless person, or you help whoever it is, your heart feels good about the fact that you just helped. And all of the near-death experiencers tell the story of their life review that they have at the end of their life, where they see all the things in their life that they did that affected other people, and how those people felt when they did that. So my attitude is, go out there and create things that you're going to be proud of when you see your life review, and that you're going to contribute well to other people's lives or the world or whatever it happens to be that you're focused on. It could be animals, it could be trees, whatever it is, go out there and do it. And don't think about the, things about your own life. Think about, how can I be a good person in the world? So that's my idea of what we should all do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So my first question, I'm curious, you mentioned because of this experience, and I think it's true of many that have a near-death experience, it kind of seems to like open a door. You mentioned it that way. Do you think it's possible for people to kind of open that door? And another way that I've heard it mentioned, it's almost kind of like being at this different frequency in your life. Do you think it's possible to do that without having a near-death experience?
Absolutely.
So how would you recommend someone that wants to feel closer to the other side and God, and maybe even like their relative, how do they open that door?
Well, for me, I feel it isn't so much, standing in a church, sitting in a church and listening to somebody up on the pulpit saying. It's instead opening the door personally and having a relationship that you talk with God directly. And I can be driving in my car and think of somebody that I know that needs help. You knocking on God's door and saying, I'm here, I'm yours, guide me, talk to me, whatever you want to do. I'm here because of you, and I'll come home whenever you want me to. I'm ready. So then go out there and live this beautiful life. Have this relationship where you feel your door is open and that you feel, connection to the other side. I mean, it's as beautiful as looking at flowers and, loving the world, loving people. That is what is beautiful. And that's what we all need to be doing, because if we did that, would war happen? Would all the politics in the world be going on, everything negative? Bottom line is, open your door, keep it open all the time. Have a communication upstairs with him. And he's here. He's not just in a book closed in the Bible. That's not who he is. He's here. He's reacting and helping and caring and loving. He's alive, but he's, not able to be seen. So you have to trust and you have to believe. So that's what I do. And I love the relationship that I feel that I have with him. And it makes my life very special. And I feel guided all the time. Somebody new is put in front of me, then I want to help in whatever way I can to make their life, even if it's just for 5 minutes, happier, better, improved. So yeah.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
And the other one I have is a little bit more just out of sheer curiosity. Do you know what the other button was that the guy that was pushing? Like
yes.
what ended up happening there?
He pushed the button that would lower my head and raise my feet.
Okay, so it's sheer just angle of the bed.
The other button would have raised my head and lowered my feet. So he just pushed the wrong button.
Yeah.
Oops.
And that made...
And he knew it. When he looked down at me, he went like, oh my God. And then that was the last thing I saw. Shut my eyes and I'm up there and he's down here and calling code blue and whoo. Yeah. So
similar thing with some other experiences that we've had on the channel, like Scott Drummond, where thank goodness you didn't end up passing away, because you'd feel horrible for the person that made the mistake.
Oh, for sure. That would. And I never sued anybody. I never sued the hospital or anything. That wasn't my resource to do that. It was more just that gift. I see how that gift was placed in my life at that time to help me to strengthen, to get away.
Yeah.
And that was the big deal for my life, because getting away from that, I don't even hate the person that I was married to. When I see him, because obviously we share a daughter, not very often, but hi, how are you? How are you doing, guys? Okay, yeah, I don't carry any hatred for him, even though, the abuse and stuff was long and drawn out and horrible. I let go of that. And I always love this phrase, let go, let God. Yeah. So that's what I did. And I feel that that's really healing as well, to not have, anger and and frustration over that period of my life, I feel that we're given all these different aspects in our life. They're both positive and negative, and we are then here to figure out a way through that particular thing in the best way possible without hurting other people, with, getting ourselves through it without hurting ourselves even more. And then, that's how we grow. That's how our soul grows, by learning, by going through these different things that we're exposed to on the earth, and growing our soul by having those experiences, both good and bad. So
Beautiful. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for sharing your experience. And yeah, what's amazing too is I understand you've probably been interviewed a good deal, and it sounds like you have a pretty big group out there. But what's cool about this too is that guaranteed, even with like the community that we have built, this will go out to hundreds and thousands of people that have never heard your story before. So
if it
that'll
goes
be,
out to just one
yeah,
person
yep,
and blesses one person and changes their outlook on the world, I am happy.
it will. Yeah, it
That's
will,
why I give it
guaranteed.
away.
So yeah,
That's right.
thank you so much.
Thank
Appreciate it.
you. Thank
Yeah, thank
you.
you.